So after this table was sanded and cleaned, I primed with Zinsser Ben shellac based primer, 2 coats, and then I painted with Country Chick Bee's Knees, which is a nice yellow, and Rusty Nail on the drawer. After a couple of coats of the Bee's Knees, that beautiful yellow color, I decided to stencil the top, and to do the stencil, I'm using the Dixie Belle clear coat in gloss mixed with just a little bit of the Gemstone Mousse in Golden Gem. And I do this on a paper plate, which makes it easier to pick up on the brush. And I'm using the Dixie Belle Bells and Whistles Morocco stencil. And this is a large stencil, so it does cover completely the top of this nightstand. It's a beautiful stencil. So here I lay the stencil down on the top. The stencil had tape on it from before, and the tape really doesn't work for the top here. I mostly just held it in place. You can use a stencil adhesive spray as well. That's certainly an option. Here I opted to just be careful and make sure to kind of have it in place where I wanted it, and just make sure I had it straight. I do believe the stencil had just a little bit of the adhesive spray on it from before, that's why I was pressing down. But I'm showing you here the Dixie Belle Best Staying brush, which is my favorite brush to stencil with. And that's the mixture of the Gemstone Mousse and the gloss clear coat. And I dab the brush in. This is a natural bristle brush. It's very large, round, thick brush. The bristles are fairly stiff, so that works great for stenciling. And I dab it into the mixture, and then I dab it off on a paper towel so I don't have the brush overloaded. You don't want to overload your brush. You really want enough, but not too much. You can always add more, but it's much more difficult to take away. And if you have a lot of excess on your brush, you run the risk of it getting under the edges and not really getting those clear, defined patterns of the stencils. So I begin to stencil on dabbing, just dabbing straight down, not rubbing, but dabbing straight down in a sort of a dabbing or pouncing motion to get the paint onto the tabletop. Kind of trying to make sure I cover all the design, but again, being cautious not to overload the brush with the paint mixture. I did, of course, speed this up to make it a little quicker for you to see, but I just continue to pounce along the whole of the stencil. You can see how I'm somewhat holding the stencil in place. I just don't want it to move. If it moves, you run the risk of smudging the design or just messing it up in some way. So I try to go slow. Even though I sped this up, I try to go slow and take my time when I'm doing this to make sure I get all the little edges and so forth done, get all those areas covered. If you miss a spot, you can always lay the stencil back down. Just make sure to line up exactly where it needs to go, and fix any spots. So now the reveal, slowly pull up one side of the stencil, trying to avoid laying it back down because that one side might be a little wet with the paint still. So there you can see the stenciled design on the top. And I'm going to do this drawer front as well, which is the drawer that goes into this table, and it's painted in the Rusty Nail color. And then I did the stencil design on the top as well, using that same stencil, just one little portion of that stencil. And here you can see the decoupage paper that I used. It's called Whimsical Mediterranean, and it is also by Dixie Belle Bells and Whistles. And that's the completed project. It was a fun project. It's sort of busy. It has a lot of design and a lot of color, and but it's fun, something a little different. So I hope you enjoyed it.